Afternoon, Austin.
Hey, Dad, how are you doing?
Good. We got Super Bowl Sunday. We got special guest for Super Bowl Sunday. You saved these guys. You were holding them in your back pocket for the Super Bowl, huh?
Yep, absolutely.
Well, we're excited. Today, our journey takes us to Mobile, Alabama, where we'd like to celebrate the divine union between a high school coach and his wife. Today's story is more than just football. It's about teachers, musicians, and followers of Christ. We're blessed today to share their story and the eternal hope of God found within it. My name is Ken Karcher, and I'll be your host. Alongside me is my son, Austin Karcher, the co-host. Today, we'd like to welcome Team Steiner as our guest to Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. Welcome, Dalton and Brianna. How are you?
We're good.
We're good.
Thanks
Hope
for
you're all
having
well.
us.
Yeah.
We're
Wow.
excited to have you.
We're so excited. We'll get started with just kind of your growing up years, and we'll either one of you can answer first, but I'll throw it out there. The first question I'd ask is, where did you all grow up? And then tell us about your family dynamics and describe the relationships you had with those in your family.
All right. You want to start? You can start.
I'll start. Mine is not quite as much of a tapestry as his, I'm sure. But so I'm Brianna Steiner. I grew up in the small town of Milry, Alabama, with one stoplight and a drugstore, a school, but a lot of churches. And my dad was actually a football coach for 29 years. So for my whole life, I only ever knew him as a football coach. And my mom worked in marketing. I have two older brothers, and one lives down here in Mobile, and then the other one lives in Tuscaloosa and is also a coach. Grew up in church. The Lord saved me when I was about 6, so I remember it very vividly, and I'm thankful that I've been a Christian as long as I have. I heard somebody say one time they want their kids to have boring testimonies. And I kind of, up until I was about 19, that's how I felt about my story, was that I had a boring testimony. But in a sense, I'm thankful for that. So, yeah, I had a big extended family growing up. We were in church all of the time. My dad was a deacon. My mom and dad taught Sunday school together. Very small high school, small church family. And then went to University of Mobile. That's how Dalton and I met.
Yeah.
So, and then we can get into more later, but that's kind of the gist of my upbringing, I guess.
Yeah.
Awesome. What about you, Dalton?
Well, so my family dynamic would require us to have a big whiteboard back here, family trees, and almost like a bracket looking thing.
Go ahead. Bring it on.
I wish. Pretty much, I was born in I was born in Mobile, but we grew up in Bayou Battery, Alabama. It's really Irvington. That's where Allen Bryant High School is. And I have what I would say 6 brothers and sisters. But what we've said growing up is it was it was a yours, mine, ours, and theirs situation. Adoptions and half brothers and sisters. But so I have 3 sisters and we share the same mom. And I have 2 brothers. Well, I have 3 brothers. Well, see, that's why I'm getting confused, because if I had my whiteboard, I could describe it. I have one, a twin brother, Delton, who, if he was sitting here, you'd think we were the same person. But so we grew up in a household of the older girls they moved out, so there's really about 4 of us living in the house at the same time. And but my story's it's a crazy one, but it's something that's you can see how God has had his hand throughout my life. And even today when things happen, it's helped me to have a peace in certain situations when things go good. And also being thankful for the grace of God when things are good, or when things are bad, in the mercy that he gives. So pretty much my mom and dad had the twins. We're the only ones that belong to those
Buckle
two.
up. Buckle up.
Me and Delton are the only ones that belong to those two. My 3 sisters my 3 sisters belong to my mother and their father. His name's Jeff. And then I have brothers that I call brothers that belong to Jeff and someone else. So pretty much growing up, my mom and dad, I wouldn't call them. They had issues, addiction issues, just not a Christian lifestyle. My dad actually passed away in 1997, when we were 4 months old. Had a heart attack due to drug addiction and the use of drugs. And my mother continued to be on drugs, still to this day. So we don't have much communication with her. But my twin brother and I lived with her until we were about 5 years old. And then just, circumstance and things like that, we were taken away from her. And fun fact about it, and I'm trying to give you the shortened version. So Jeff, who I call my stepfather, was married to my mom, obviously, when he had my three daughters, or their three daughters, my three sisters. Jeff ends up taking us in after we get taken away from our mother. So it's pretty ironic how God worked that out. My mother was no longer married to Jeff, but once we didn't have anywhere to go, he steps in. He was married to someone else at the time, and they had two sons. So that's kind of how I call them my siblings, my brother Jacob and my brother Alex. So I have my oldest sister, Sarah. She's 41. The sister under her is Holly. She's 39. And then Tila is 31. Alex is 34, maybe. I got it mixed up there. And then Jacob was born around the same time as us, so he's also 28. Well, he'll be 28 this month. And then Delton and I are 28, born in 96. So again, it's craziness. I would have to get a whole whiteboard to explain every name, and it'd be confusion. But we all kind of grew up in church. Well, we all kind of grew up in church, and then so around 2008. Jeff, and I know this is confusing, Jeff and his wife, Darlene, at the time, ended up getting divorced. So then myself and Delton, we end up with my older sister, Sarah. So she's 41 now. So she was 25 when she took us in.
So the crazy thing, not to interrupt you, I'm 25 now. I cannot fathom taking in two 12-year-old rambunctious twins. I'm the age she was.
Yeah.
Wow.
She took us in 2008, and so I say we grew up in church, but it wasn't until we got with Sarah that I would say we were drugged. We were drugged to church. We were drugged into the choir loft, and we were forced to sit in a Sunday school room with one sweet old lady, and it was just me, my brother, and one sweet old lady every Sunday. But we were there, and just salvation-wise, there was a time where I was actually a football coach that came to Bryant when I was in high school. I graduated from Alma Bryant. And his name was Chip Curtis, is one of my mentors. Terry Curtis is his uncle at UMS Wright. Again, he drug us to Thomasville to a DNOW conference at Thomasville, Alabama. And it was there where I realized that both of us, Delton and I, we were at church and we thought we were Christians, but it wasn't until that moment that we realized that we actually needed to take Christianity seriously and made a true confession of Christ. And it kind of, our lives changed after that. And it's crazy to think that God has had his hand in every moment from the beginning till now. And it's been good. And even through all the hardship that we dealt with has helped me be a better husband. And sometimes it's tough for me to empathize and sympathize, when small things happen. But I'm learning. I'm getting better about that. But that's kind of a very brief summary. We could go. It would take 2 hours to explain. That's a very
Guys, when you look back into your home in those growing up years, how did your home influence who you are today?
Oh, for me, I think of, from my dad, I learned working. So the standard in our household was straight A's. That was the standard. And my dad wasn't really proud of you unless you got straight A's. And so that was a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it kind of had a negative impact because I stressed so much about my grades. But on the other hand, no one ever had to tell me when I got to college, and beyond, to work hard. So I would say from my dad, I definitely learned the work ethic side of things. And then from my mom, I learned more so about um, faith and having a commitment to spending time in the Word, and spending time in prayer, and being there for my friends. And my dad was a believer too, but you just learn from your mom and your dad. And every morning without fail, for as long as I can, as far back as I can remember, I would wake up in the morning. My mom had this like nook in the kitchen that had a bookshelf and a desk. And that was like her quiet time spot. And every single morning, it didn't matter what was going on, what hardship we might have been facing. She was there, and she was spending time in the Word. She was praying, commentaries, highlighters, everything, and that's who I learned from as far as having a commitment to the Word. And she never told me every single day, you better read your Bible, you better pray. It wasn't that. It was just modeled for me.
Mm.
And so now I like to think that I'm hopefully, going to be the same for our future kids one day. But yeah, that's definitely. And then of course, having two older brothers, that taught me to be tough. I tell my students all the time, I have high schoolers, I'm like, you cannot hurt my feelings. I promise.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's the gist of for me.
I would say for me, just in a nutshell, growing up, I've learned to take care of people, and because I've seen it so many times when and be in the gift of being selfless, especially when it comes to coaching. And I picked it a lot of that up from obviously Jeff, my stepfather, and then my sister Sarah. There are times where people will say, "Hey, you're crazy for doing this," or "You're crazy. This doesn't make sense what you're doing," when it comes to being selfish or selfless or taking care of someone else. That helped me. That model of that the example that they gave growing up has helped me a lot. And also just appreciating, and this is something I'm not great at, but growing up the way I did, and the uncertainty that I had a lot of times when I was younger, it's helped me to appreciate the small things. Like I think about like with me and Austin Karcher, with obviously Karcher. The times I learned the most from Austin wasn't in the big meeting rooms. It would maybe be just me and him, in his office, and the small things. Growing up the way I did, and obviously, like I said, with the uncertainty, it helped me to appreciate, to take care of people. We're not meant to fight alone. And then also really create relationships, because especially in our profession, we're all going through stuff. And I tell her all the time, and this is a cliche within the coaching world, I mean, you could be fired and they'll have they'll have your replacement pretty soon, or there could be a health problem with you, and more people spread rumors than they do actually check on you, So that growing up the way I did, and how people that I've been influenced by have been selfless and just giving of themselves, that has helped me in my profession, and I'm thankful for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Dalton and Brianna. Describe one of your favorite childhood memories.
Oh my gosh. I say this a lot. I feel like my childhood is a blur. I had a really good childhood, and I think that might be why it's a blur, because I didn't have a whole lot of traumatic things happen until much later. But I would say I always go back to like Christmas Eve and Christmas mornings were really special with our family. We would always do Christmas Eve at my granny's, which was conveniently like 5 minutes away. And then Christmas morning would be just a sweet time. We didn't get everything we ever wanted all the time, but we had everything we needed, plus a little bit more, and I just remember the sacrifices that my parents made to ensure that we had those things. And, I might have asked for something in March, and I wouldn't get it till Christmas, but my mom and dad would have everything supplied for us that we needed. And I also think that something I'm fond of is how adamant they were about having us in church.
Yeah.
It was never a question, are we going to church today? We just knew Sunday morning, you get up, you get dressed, you're going to church, you know. I would say as many of my childhood memories as I have, a lot of them are at church, not even at home, because that's where we were. And that was always a priority for our family. So,
One thing that comes to my mind, so my sister Sarah, when she took us in, obviously we were about 12 in 2008. Right after that, I'm not trying to trauma dump, but there's just certain aspects. Her husband actually left her and she got divorced. So, and at the time it was myself, Delton, Sarah, my oldest sister, and then she had a baby, Jaden, who's my nephew, and he was actually adopted, and that's a beautiful story in itself. But one thing, one great memory that I always have, and I'll share this with her, there was a time where she was struggling. I mean, it was just her. Obviously, she was 25, 26 at the time. And we loved the Atlanta Braves, and we loved Alabama football. Those are the two things we loved. And there was a time where I could tell she was struggling. She was young. She works for Aflac now, and she's really climbed the ladder. But back in the day, she was struggling, you know, trying to make ends meet. And I remember one time I said, Sarah, we need to go to Atlanta. We need to plan a trip and go to Atlanta. And I could just tell that she was hesitant because obviously I didn't know that she was struggling with money. But I was able to go on StubHub or whatever website and find us some I got $18 tickets right here. We're going to see the Padres and the Braves. It's not a big game because they're not even in the same division where we're at, you know. But I remember her bringing us to that, and, you know, it was the cheapest tickets you can get. We got a hotel room that we were scared to stay at. And I remember Jaden being with us, and that was a good memory. And I think about that a lot because obviously, like I said, I didn't realize how much she was struggling. But just to do that and know that we loved the Braves so much and to take us on that trip and to have our nephew there, that was a great moment. That's something I always think about.
Well, Dalton, last week, Austin and I had Sid Bream and his wife. You've probably heard of him with the Braves. So being a Braves fan, that I figured you'd enjoy that too. So
yeah, he was safe on that slide.
That's right. So what role did football play in your homes?
oh my gosh. How long do you have? The only role. So, I mean, in our house, the only channel that was on was ESPN. Maybe TBS, like The Big Bang Theory or some other kind of sitcom, if my dad was up to date on all things sports. But yeah, so my dad was a football coach, and you know, most football coaches also coach other things as well, but football is like their main thing.
Yeah.
So he coached. He started out at Beauregard High School, which is in the Opelika area. He was there for about 8 years, and then I wasn't born yet at that time. He got an opportunity to come back home to be the defensive coordinator at his alma mater. Coaching at your alma mater can go several different ways. And he coached there for 17 years after that, and then the head coaching job came open, and he applied, and after 17 years was really not even considered. And he was leading the region in shutouts. He was a great coach. But again, hometown things and politics and that kind of stuff came into play. I can get into more of that later. But so for a couple of years, he was in limbo. I did see, even as young as I was, kind of a decline in his pride, you know, and his mental health, even because I know that especially for men, you put a lot of who you are in your career. And and I saw that even as an 11-year-old, you know, and well, then a couple of years later, that same head coach that left, he got another job at a private school just across the state line. He called my dad and he said, I want you to come coach with me again, like old times. So he went and coached there for a couple of years. They had some good winning seasons, and then Coach Taylor retired again. And so then my dad was kind of in a limbo. At this point, I'm probably a junior. No. Freshman in high school. Well, then Milry, the other school, wants him back, but not as a head coach. They just needed some help in the defense area, and he was a good coach. He's passed away now, but he was a very good coach. So he did that for about a year. That did not really go that well, not well enough for him to want to continue to do it. So around about the 10th or 11th grade, his football journey kind of came to an end, and it was never really the same after that, because something he was so passionate about just kept ending in kind of heartbreak or not working out. And that it definitely took a toll on our family. But we were always, at least a couple of times a year, we were at an Auburn football game. He was a big Auburn fan. And I married an Alabama fan. But, so, yeah. And we would always have, this is a fond memory, going back to the other question, a random Tuesday night, we could have a football player from 2005 just happen to come by the house, and have dinner, bring his wife, bring his girlfriend, whatever. And that's the impact that he made on those young men. And a lot of them that he coached are now coaches. And so, and I know, and I'd like to believe that they were influenced by him. But so that's kind of the overview of the role football played for us.
What about you, Dalton?
Well, we're big old guys, so even growing up and you're 6 years old and you're way overweight, you're like, I'll be a football player one day. And you're like, well, I probably need to start eating better and eat healthier. I'm not just going to be a football player just because I'm big. But going back to those times, I mean, we were 7 years old trying to get in to play football at the park in Valley of the Battery. And we're having to play with a 10-year-old. And we're still not making weight. I'm sure it's everywhere, but there was a weight limit, and we couldn't even make the weight for the 10-year-olds, and we were 7. So we learned some adversity there. But I mean, really, and this is cliche and kind of cheesy, but being able to go to an Alabama football game when I was young, and having to go and had been through so much growing up. Nick Saban was hired in 2007. We know. Being able to go to a game when we finally moved in with Jeff and Darlene, his wife, being able to do stuff like that as a family, and learning, being an obsessive. I knew every player. I knew every jersey number. I knew every position they played. Just that, getting the joy of being introduced to football and going to a game like that, that was huge for us, especially going through so much at a younger age. And then obviously getting into the coaching part of it, coaches influenced me in middle school, high school, obviously. I mean, this is every coach you talk to had a coach that influenced them. But it wasn't just the regular coaches. It was the ones that you could tell were Christians that really influenced us. And obviously football teaches you how to face adversity, how to overcome obstacles. So that's kind of the biggest thing. When it comes to getting into coaching, I wasn't really planning on it at first. And then I kind of just came to my senses one day, and I said, okay, I'm supposed to.
Okay,
so,
can I interject?
Yeah.
Austin's heard this story. When I met Dalton, the night I met him, coaches, plural, he was singing on a stage in Mobile. He was on college scholarship to sing. Well, then we start getting to know each other, and I'm thinking, oh, he's probably going to be like a worship pastor. And knowing my background, know that. And then he told me, oh, yeah, I want to be a football coach. And I was like, oh.
With the music people.
So as a worship leadership major
Yeah,
in
I
college.
did. I thought I was going to be a big time, First Baptist Dallas music minister, and then I don't have to have a degree to do that.
Well, what part of when did y'all recognize your love for music?
Early on in my life, and the thing about music with me is I have memories, and probably everybody does, but like Delton and I are weird. That's right, Delton and I. I'm not. She's an English teacher. We're weird about that. Like there are certain memories we have that music played a big role in that. Like I could be like, Delton, what does this song make you think of? And he's like, oh, it makes me think about that. And I'm like, it's so weird. I was thinking the same thing. I think just realizing that music, I don't know, it really is it's therapeutic. Music is just. I mean, I don't know. I feel like you could.
It was probably an escape for y'all.
Yeah, I would say that. And then, really, once we became Christians, it was how great it was just to worship God through your music and then lead other people in doing that. That's where I was like, man, this is awesome, because a lot of, music, secular music, I wouldn't say all of it's bad, but the message isn't the same. There's something different about Christian music. But then we realized we could sing a little bit, so that made it even more fun when you can get with other people that can sing good and just have fun with it. So,
well, you're not talking to two guys that can sing well, just so you know. So don't ask me to sing a song.
Austin, he sings loud and proud, though.
I sing loud and proud. I just got to be around a lot of people to tune me out.
Now, yeah, I grew up singing as well. And that's how we met, because I went to University of Mobile.
She was obsessed.
Yes.
She was a fan.
I was a big fan of the group that he was in. Kind of like what do they call them? A roadie? Not a roadie, but like a
I wouldn't. Groupie is a
groupie. I know it's derogatory, but I'm just telling you, that's how I just really I enjoyed voices, and I wanted to go to University of Mobile. And
Mr. Ken, do you remember a group in the started in the 70s called Truth? It was a
yes, I remember hearing of yes.
Truth. Roger Breland. So he was in charge of a group at the University of Mobile that I sang with. We call it the Voices of Mobile, and she was obsessed with us. Like if we were within an hour and a half, an hour somewhere in there, she was at the concert. Better, she said. I remember.
Don't embarrass
me.
I
turned the other way. I said, "Hey, do you know Dr. Breland?" And she said, "Do I know Dr. Breland?"
Well, I knew who he was.
I was like, "Well, I don't know about her. She's a little weird." But it worked out. But yeah.
So music is how you really met in college.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what I would say. That's what brought us together at first. And I really put my identity in singing for the better part of my adolescent years. I was all about singing. I thought that was, I knew that I had other talents, but I just didn't hone in on those as much.
So Brianna, I won't ask Dalton, but I will let you give the answer. Who's the better singer?
Probably him.
Really? Wow.
But I guess it's hard to compare male and female. He's a better musician for sure. Like he can play guitar, he can pick up piano, he can, harmonize really easily. Like he hears everything. He's got more of an ear for music than I do. I have to really practice.
Yeah.
If that helps.
Remember the first head coach I had at Bryant. So I'm not an expert on this, but I know like if you're musical or whatever, use different sides of your brain.
Yeah.
Remember I would be talking to him, and Coach Hain was his name. He'd be like, Steiner, use the other side of your brain for this. Because he was a military guy. He was not artistical at all.
Well, tell us a little bit about y'all's high school experiences and the role that maybe sports or music played in high school.
Okay. So with me, I was always, and I think administration and teachers respected this. Delton and I were crazy about Alma Brown High School, and we wanted it to be great. We wanted, even at a young age, I obsessed over making that place great. Even when I was a student, even before I got there, I loved that school. I still love that school, but having the community and kind of Belton and I being the leaders of our class when it came to taking pride in where we were and taking pride in the football team, or that was huge. And a lot of people followed us. And if you ask Mr. Estell, who's our former principal, he says that we had the best class. And I think that had a lot to do with kind of getting folks to group with us and take pride in where we were and where we were from. And like I'll never forget, there was a pep rally one time when our volleyball team was going to state tournament or something, and Belton just gets up. Oh, y'all, let's go! He grabs the flag and starts running around the gym. Trouble, and he didn't get in trouble. They were happy that he did that. But and then obviously football. I played for 2 different head coaches. They were great guys. A lot of assistant coaches, because at Bryant we have a lot of assistant coaches. That's a whole other story. Well,
in 7A football in general, there are a lot of assistant coaches.
I'm saying new ones.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Continue.
But it was always good to, get new influences from certain people. We were never very good at football, but I still took pride in where I was from. And I still defended my coaches no matter what. So when people were telling me, hey, don't listen to him. No, my coach is right. I believe in what they say. I may have been wrong at the time. I was wrong now. Looking back, I was wrong. Those coaches are wrong sometimes. But it's okay. Coach now, I'm like, all right, maybe I shouldn't have defended him, but it's okay. But, yeah, I took a lot of pride in where I was from, and I still do. And sometimes it's hard. And leaving Bryant, because I left there 2 years ago, it was tough, but it was good for me to get out and go on a new venture.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the podcast today. Austin, I would like to thank each of you for taking time out of your week to listen to our podcast, Awaken Kingdom Culture. This past year has been truly amazing. The conversations that Austin and I have been able to share as a father and son, the new relationships that we have made throughout this past year, and the ability to share other people's stories have been life-changing. Each week, I continue to be reminded of the value and impact one story can have. As a listener-supported podcast, I'm grateful for all of you who have partnered with us this past year. If this podcast has spoken to your heart and you'd like to see it continue to awaken other hearts and minds, then I'd like to invite you to become a teammate. If you'd like to partner with Win Awakening, as well as our podcast, you can give at winawakening.org. And please spread the word about our ministry to all of your friends. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe to Awaken Kingdom Culture, Spotify, and YouTube channels. To listen to and watch our podcast weekly, every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern. If you'd like to follow my socials as well and hear about the upcoming podcast news, watch the latest clips, and get an inside look at my life behind the scenes, then follow Ken Karcher on Facebook and X and KP Karcher on Instagram. I encourage you to subscribe to our mailing list and to partner with us as we continue to awaken hearts and minds one story at a time. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
So my high school was K through 12. So I was at Milry, the same campus with the same class from the time I was 5 to 17.
Wow.
Which, looking back, was really special. At the time, I took it for granted, and I was like, I can't wait to get out of this small town. I was really, I think I was probably a little too big for my britches. I didn't value where I was from as much as I do now. Now, I'm not considering moving back, but there's something to be said for growing up in that small town environment. It can be a lot more controlled. and you can't really get away with as much either. So I was a goody two shoes. I didn't do anything wrong.
No,
Anything.
she still does.
Well, yeah, that's true.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's good for me.
I'm like Austin. I was very scared of getting in trouble. I was very scared of disappointing my parents or my teachers or whatever. But the problem is that kind of told me to put my identity in something other than Jesus.
Mhm.
And now looking back, I see that, but hindsight's 2020. So, but I had some great friends in high school. I was like the FCA president at Milry for whatever that's worth. But it was a good time, and I cheered in high school as well. I was not athletic in the slightest. I am not athletic. It's bad. So our kids hopefully can get some of that
You
from
can't
him.
ride a bike. You cannot ride a
I
bike.
can ride a bike. But you know how people say you never forget how to ride a bike? I'm proof that maybe you do.
You can't ride an electric bike, but you don't even have to pedal. Like,
Listen,
she can't do it.
Listen, we don't have to share. I have other talents, but
She does.
anyway, so
She
I
does.
cheered because that was kind of at my school, there was no arts department. There was nothing that I could really exercise my singing talent in, but I also didn't want to be one of those kids who didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And so my mom was a cheerleader, and I was like, oh, well, I could probably do that. There aren't any balls involved in that. So I cheered for 3 years, and that was fun. I enjoyed that. And then I knew pretty early that I wanted to go to University of Mobile and sing in the choir and everything. And so when it came time for graduation, I was tunnel vision, like could not wait to leave, my small town and be on to bigger and better things. And I think there is something to be said for getting out of your town, whether it's small or not, and just to see other things.
Yeah.
But I'm thankful. I'm definitely thankful for where I grew up, and I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
So you already mentioned that you all met at University of Mobile.
Yeah.
And music was really the avenue that you met. How did you know, though, that Brianna was the one, Dalton?
Huh. Yeah. Perfect. It's a good. So, fun fact, I think 8 years ago now, it would have been this weekend that I finally texted her for the first time. I was watching the Super Bowl by myself, lonely. Someone had given me her number, said, hey, she was young. I mean, I was a sophomore in college. She was a senior in high school. She wasn't 18 yet. She was 17.
I was headed to University of Mobile, and a mutual friend connected us.
And her birthday's in June, so it's a summer birthday. And so at that time, I was 20 years old. She was 17. And I finally texted her and said, hey, I'd like to get to know you. But fun fact in regards to music, I realized she was the right one. I messaged her, or I texted her. We were just, texting. I said, what kind of music do you like? And I'm expecting her to say,
Taylor Swift,
Jesus Culture, or Bethel, or Taylor Swift. She said, I really like the Eagles. I like Steve Miller Band. I like Marshall, all these old Southern rock bands.
Well, that's what my dad made me listen to.
That's my era. Jeez, that's my era.
And I'm like, yeah, that's it right there.
I think he was locked in.
And I think I said, I think I love you. I just said. That's a pretty good sign there that she doesn't like the new music. She likes older music.
That's good. That's good.
What was the question?
What was it again?
I had asked him.
That's right.
How did he know you were the one? Now, is there a different story that you knew that he was the one?
No. Oh, I pretty much. I think we never broke up or anything. We dated, and from the beginning, I think we knew this is probably it.
Yeah. We never had any.
Never.
People don't believe me. Like, we never.
Love at first sight.
Oh man, we never. We were just starstruck over each other.
That's good.
It was great for a long time. It still is.
Now,
It's still good.
now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is a point that brings y'all to a difficult part in your story.
Yeah.
And, obviously I want to be tender to this and open to whatever you desire to share here. But Brianna, if you're comfortable, I'd appreciate if you, share kind of what went through and how it impacted you, Dalton, as what transpired over the next, however long.
Yeah. So I mentioned previously that I saw a decline in my dad's kind of mental health. I wouldn't have even called it that at that time because I didn't really know the term for it. I was only a teenager. But when he lost football, it changed not everything about him, but almost everything. It was as if nothing else mattered as much as that. And so there was a series of events. He was still teaching, and the details aren't as important on this part, but it just leads us into the bigger picture of it all. In a small town, rumors start, and when they start, they spread like wildfire. And when you are a teacher or a coach, you are under a microscope like no other profession except maybe somebody in ministry. And I don't think people realize that comes with the territory. So some rumors started. It resulted in my dad being put on admin leave in February of my senior year of high school in a small town. So you can imagine how hard it was for me to even go to school at that point. And that's when I met Dalton, I had already met him, but that's when we started communicating. So he reached out to me. Little did he know that the very night that he texted me for the first time was either, if not the first, one of my dad's first panic attacks. And I always like to say that God sent Dalton to me as a distraction. I had no idea, and he had no idea what would transpire in the next year and a half. But the Lord knew, and nothing catches him by surprise. But my dad was able to still put on kind of a show when he met Dalton. And did you notice anything? I mean, you didn't know him, so it was probably hard for you to tell that anything was.
No, I mean, I could tell. But for me, it was hard to tell anything was wrong. And the reason I say that is because going back, I never had structure. It was always me and my sister, or me and some other parents, and people taking care of us. So for that time, it was just good to see a family structure, see a mom and a dad and brother, sister, another brother. So it was. I was there all the time. I mean, if we weren't singing on the weekend, I was there. And my sister gets mad at me about it. But I'd go sleep upstairs, and Brianna would sleep downstairs. I always stayed up there, and their parents loved me enough to do that. But to have that family structure, it was huge for me. So it was hard for me to realize anything was wrong, because on the outside everything looked okay. But I could see some decline. I mean, I could tell that something wasn't right from him, just because it'd be tough. It'd be tough to talk to him because the anxiety would take over his body, and that was tough. And me not knowing the extent of the situation, it was tough for me as well, because I just wanted things to be normal, and it finally was. I mean, he had a great mom and a great dad.
And they really looked at Dalton as part of the family, like from the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's just the type of people that they were. You were welcome in our home anytime. Unless you gave them a reason to not be welcome, anybody could come, and anybody could stay if they needed to, or, our house was kind of the hot spot for that. And they loved him so much. And I think they knew. That we would get married for sure.
My sister met her mom. So my sister was
This is a good story.
Was selling Aflac, selling insurance in Millery, and met her mom for the first time. And my sister was protective over us because she took us in and tried to raise us up the right way. And her mom was like, man, he's the right one. I already know they're going to get married. My sister's like, hold up now. They just started dating. What are you talking about? But she knew, they knew, and they trusted me, like I said. So it was a good period of my life. I mean, because there'd be times where her mom would call, hey, start cooking dinner. I'm like, man, this is great. This is what life, this is what I felt like it was supposed to be like, this family dynamic, and it was good for a period of time.
So, over the next 6 months or so, there was still kind of a decline. My dad didn't really have an interest in going to church. My home church, without any conversation, without any discipleship or anything like that, removed him from the deacon board. And you got to think, this is a man who was chairman of the deacons at one point, and then they just removed him, and that's a whole other story about how church discipline should or shouldn't look, but different episode for a different day. And that was one of the things that really kind of took it to a different level, was that our church family was not supportive. They just weren't. Everything was very surface level, and it's almost like they didn't want to be associated with him. So my mom, in the meantime, is trying to kind of hold everything together, being the godly woman that she was, and it was breaking her too.
Yes.
So in May, I graduated, and my dad got to hand me my diploma because he was on admin leave, but he was still a teacher there. So he came and handed me my diploma, and we had graduation dinner and all of that stuff. Dalton was there, and then that summer I was getting ready to go off to UM. Well, all throughout the summer, my dad was kind of in and out of counseling and taking different medications. The medications really were not fit for him, and they would switch him back and forth, and it just wasn't a great situation. And there was a lot of secrecy. Not a lot of people knew what we were kind of dealing with on an intimate level. And my freshman year, I obviously went to UM, and I was away from it all.
Yeah. And
I don't know. I just know that it wasn't great. That my mom, again, was trying to hold things together and keep everyone happy is not even a good word, but just keep everything together is the only way I know how to say it. And got through the whole freshman year. I knew that there were still issues. Then that next summer, my dad ended up in an extended stay kind of facility. He was really at a point with his anxiety and depression that he could not function.
No.
He was not at all the man that raised me.
Not to cut you off,
it's
but
okay.
You could tell whatever medicine he was on based on how he was acting. Because again, I'm not saying there was malpractice, because obviously I'm not a doctor. But there would be times where it'd be okay, and then there'd be other times where it would just be no emotion at all. Like staring at the TV.
It was scary. It was actually scary.
Not saying a word. You're talking to him, and he doesn't even hear what you're saying. Some of the meds and the tapering off versus the weaning, or versus quitting cold turkey versus we're going to give you something else on top of this. It created something
like an imbalance.
We couldn't recognize who we were talking to, and that was tough.
So, I go home for the summer after my freshman year. They moved me out of my dorm, and I'm home, and I got a summer internship, and I was doing great, and I thought maybe my dad was improving a little bit. I don't know.
And there were times where if there was something, and we're all the same way, when there was something to occupy his mind, when it was football season, Auburn was playing, everything was good. When it was hunting season, everything seemed good. It's just like us as coaches. There's seasons, where I describe it during football season. I don't even feel, it feels like a completely different time right now in the spring compared to when we were in the fall and, we were putting all the hours. So it's like those seasons, it would be okay. And then when it was, there's nothing to do, like think about if I'm not coaching anything in the spring, hey, I'm going home every day at 3:00. That's weird. It's
Yeah.
that type of situation when there wasn't a season or wasn't something that he could, um, be occupied with. That was tough on him. And that's when we got to the summer of that year.
So that summer, I was living at home. There would be good days and bad days. And I'm trying to think of I would really go back to Mobile a lot. So I would go stay with his sister or.
Yeah, she would stay with Sarah.
I would escape. I would want to escape because I didn't, like I said, I didn't recognize him anymore. And it was really hard. I mean, I was 18. And I just didn't know what else to do. I just knew I wanted to be with Dalton as much as I could, So I would do that. And there, we went to the beach as a family in like the
June.
last week of June, first week of July, something like that.
Yeah.
So I would have turned 19.
And at that time, I'm sorry to cut
It's
you
okay.
off, but like this is important to it as well. I was with Voices of Mobile traveling, and we would do a summer tour all summer, and we wouldn't get back until July. That May, what she was going through, and it was beating me up so bad, and nobody knew it because they didn't understand what I was having to deal with their situation. That Dr. Breland, hey, what's wrong? What's going on? Like, do you need to go home? Do you need to not do the summer tour? I ended up leaving Voices of Mobile early because of that. So then I was able to go on their, annual beach trip that they go on in June. But that was a big deal because folks, like people in the group or Dr. Breland, they just thought that there was something wrong with me. Maybe I didn't want to be in the group anymore. It wasn't that. It was the toll that I was having to deal with her situation. They didn't know it because I was more involved with the family than, your typical boyfriend, girlfriend. I mean, that was my family as well.
Yeah.
So dealing with that caused me to get out of the group early, right before that summer. So you can continue. Sorry.
So we went to the beach. The last family picture we had was on the dock, on one of the docks in Destin, and I always say that you could have put our family on the cover of a Southern Living magazine. I mean,
Yeah.
Just picture perfect church going people. Mom and dad worked. We had a beautiful home on a beautiful piece of property, but everything's not as it seems. So there was a weekend in July that I went back to Mobile, and it was a Saturday night. We went bowling. We ate out with some of his friends, and then I stayed with his stepmom that night, and he was at Jeff's, but and then that morning we head to church, and we get a phone call, and just to rip the Band-Aid off, my dad had taken my mom's life and taken his own. And Dalton had to tell me that.
Yeah.
And it just really shows you that no one is exempt from suffering. And that, you have these people, and Dalton's story is traumatic as well, but you see people every day that you just never know what they're going through, or what they've been through.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until this year that I could just say out loud what I just said to you, just because it's so, you just never would have thought. Nobody ever would have thought that would happen to our family. Like, that's something that you see on the news about somebody else,
Yeah.
That's something that happens in a movie. That's something that's so far-fetched and so horrible. Surely that would never happen.
Yeah.
And then it did.
Yeah.
And And the thing that I can tell you now, looking back, is that the peace that I felt in that moment, getting that news, could have only been from God. It was only God, because how do you reckon with that? How do you move on, move forward? I still had 3 more years of college. I still, I had things to do. My brothers had, my oldest brother had just graduated from Auburn 6 months prior. The middle brother, I'm the baby, but the middle brother had 1 year left at Alabama, or 2 years, 1 or 2 years left at Alabama. And this horrible thing had just happened, but life has to go on, And so we had to bury our parents at 19, 22, and 24.
Yeah.
And nobody had the words to say. But the question that I got, and I think people asked Dalton this as well, is how's Brianna? And I can't, it's peace that passes understanding. There were hard moments and hard days that I was mad at God, that I questioned, and that I cried, and, but I just felt like the Lord had his arms wrapped around me, and all of those truths about Scripture that my parents had instilled in me, and all of those songs, those hymns like "Great is Thy Faithfulness" and "It Is Well," and all of those things gave me peace in something that no one should ever have to experience. But people would just ask, the question was always, is Brianna processing everything? What's interesting is that people say, hey, we're praying for you. We're praying that you would have peace. We're here if you need anything. We're just praying for the peace that passes understanding. But then when God gives it to you, they ask why, or they don't understand. So you're telling me you're praying for my peace. I'm telling you I have it. But you're telling me I'm not processing things. What do you want me to do? You want me to just rip my cloths and cry in the middle of the floor in biology? I can't, the Lord gave me what I needed every day to move forward. And it was just day by day. And now almost 7 years have passed, and it's still the same. It's still just one day at a time.
Yeah.
Well, Brianna, thank you for being transparent and vulnerable. I know that is not easy to share, but I do believe the truth that sometimes people's scars or hurts are signs of hope for other people. And I appreciate your willingness to share that. Yeah. Dalton, from your perspective, knowing that you love this person and that you're about to, at some point, get married to her, how did you process walking through that season?
I had to grow up quick, really quick. Same situation that she said. I just remember, and again, people didn't understand what I was going through because they thought we were just a regular boyfriend, girlfriend, but it wasn't like that for me. People that don't have a Christian worldview don't understand dating, don't understand, courtship, I guess you could say. They don't understand that I'm in this relationship with this woman because I'm going to marry this woman, not because I'm just, we're dating and we have a fling and we're boyfriend, girlfriend. It wasn't like that. I was investing into my future with her family, and they were investing in me. I had to grow up. But like I said, looking back, I thank God because I had so many examples of that. I had a sister who took us in when she was 25. No business raising us. And that's all God. That's not us. That's all God. And then again,
Amen.
The peace that passes understanding. I remember telling her, when I didn't have anything else to say. It was, hey, we're not moving on from this because we can't move on. You can't move on from that, but we have to move forward. Life is going to go on, and she'll tell you examples of this. And this is not talking bad. This is just life. Everybody has their own issues. Those people don't text or call anymore. It was just in that situation.
Yeah, the world. I mean, the world keeps spinning eventually.
It has to. And God, because like she said, we found out everything that. I mean, we didn't know what happened. And I'm just be transparent again. Her brother called her and said, "Hey, all he said was, Daddy messed up. We didn't know what was going on. We just got in the car and started driving." And small town, we didn't know what happened. We were just headed north, headed to Millard. And then, like we were talking about small town rumors flying, there were people in the community that knew what happened before we did. So a random lady from the community called her and said, "Hey, you don't know what's going on?" She said, "No, we have no idea what's going on."
Why was anyone calling me? Like, that's the other thing I think about, that's not at all how you handle that, but go ahead.
And so, talking about growing up, I mean, she said, "Put Dalton on the phone," and then she told me what happened. I mean, and I had to tell Brianna, what happened, So right there in that moment, I realized pretty quickly, like, you're going to marry this person. You're going to have to, be a little more of a, an example, and maybe find some wisdom somewhere, because she's going to be missing it for that period of her life. Find it, pray to God to give you some wisdom, some leadership skills, some boldness, because I needed it at the time, because I was about to step into a situation that I had no idea. When we started texting and communicating, I had no idea what I was stepping into, but God did. And that's what we talk about. I mean, I'll just give you an example. Mother's Day and Father's Day has been hard for me my whole life,
Yeah.
And it wasn't until she was 18 that it got to be hard for her. But now she has somebody in me that can, it's not the same situation, but I can sympathize and I can empathize for that, because.
Well, that's a perfect example, Dalton. In the intro, I put divine union.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Is like God knew beforehand you're about to walk. I mean, we live in a broken world where things happen, and He knows who and what and when, and just to show up and just give a little bit of peace or hope or rest or encouragement. And to me, that's what triggered in my mind about both y'all's stories. And His vision and providence beforehand.
Yeah, we couldn't have planned it any better for us to end up together, because I, like I said in the beginning, was coming from this picture perfect situation, and he was coming from a dysfunctional situation, and he had experience with trauma and processing that, and not having a traditional mom and dad, and having to just kind of keep, because life keeps happening. You could get bad news today and you got to go to work tomorrow, and I think that's that special grace that God gives us. But for those in Christ, this is as bad as it gets, and that we have so much to look forward to, and that we don't grieve as those without hope.
Yeah.
Well, Dad, you want to jump to coaching?
Wow, tough to follow that. I, like my son Austin, I appreciate your transparency and vulnerability, and just your candor of how your heart hurt and continues to hurt as you walk forward. I think the thing that I'm reminded of when I hear you share your story, Brianna and Dalton, is that words are not necessary in times like this, but presence is the most important.
Yes.
And I'm just was reminded that, His presence is always there, and that's the role we as followers of Christ can play in others' lives is just be present. Keep your mouth shut and just be present.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Well, with that,
nothing,
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say there's nothing anyone can say that's going to change anything or make it better in the moment, but that's why it's so important to be in the Word and to be in prayer, because only God can give you that peace.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, Austin mentioned coaching, which I know that's how the two of you met, meaning Austin, you and Dalton.
Yeah.
But when did you know, Dalton, that you wanted to be a teacher and a coach? Tell us a little bit about your coaching career. And then Brianna, were you hesitant at all about marrying a coach?
Well, no. I mean, I knew what I was getting into. No, I was kind of excited because I like the Friday Night Lights. I like to be there and to support him, and so I was fine with it.
So I kind of always had it, had that feeling in the back of my mind that was something I was going to do, I wanted to do. And obviously, like I said, it had a lot to do with the coaches I had growing up. But really, my coaching career started at Alma Bryant. I finally got done. I got done with my with college, and I somehow ended up in a situation where I was able to long-term sub at Bryant. I was making $800 a month, but I was able to, be on the coaching staff. I didn't really do much, but I was there. I was learning, I was sitting back and learning. That would have been in 2018, and then 2019, I was able to get hired as a teacher, teach history, and I guess I would have called myself the assistant to the assistant offensive line coach. I washed clothes and did all the small stuff that nobody else wanted to do. But then after that, so I coached under Coach Hain, Doug Hain at Bryant for 2 years from 2019 to 2020. And it was good. I learned a lot. I was able to do freshman in 2020. During COVID, I was able to be the head freshman football coach. And my good friend, Michael Logan, my good friend, Jacob Whitehead, and then my brother, Delton. Jacob and Delton were middle school teachers, and we didn't have any middle school programs that year because of COVID, so they were able to coach with me. So we had 4 guys on the freshman staff. It was pretty good. And I learned a lot because and the biggest thing I learned is don't be a jerk. I mean, goodness. I think about those times because I was the head coach. I was in charge of the freshman football team. We won 1 game, and I was in charge. Melvin called a timeout one time, and I said, "You don't call timeouts. I call timeouts." And I'm like, "Thank you." So I did that for a year with those guys, and then 2021, or I guess it was around 20. It would have been December or January of 2020. Or it would have been 2021. That's when we got a new head coach at Bryant, and Austin was coming. And I remember
we're in the room Austin stayed in.
Oh yeah. And I remember Austin when we were trying to figure out what was going on. We were getting a good bit of new coaches, new offense coordinator, new defense coordinator. And Austin, before he got to Bryant, he would send, links, video links, and we'd sit in there try to get the kids to concentrate. Most of them didn't. And Austin found that out when he got there, and he was like, "Y'all been watching the videos?" And I remember listening to Austin, and I was like, I don't think I know as much football as I think I do. And that was good. And fun fact, and we've kind of hinted at it, the head coach at Bryant said, "Hey, I need one of y'all to let him stay at the house for spring football."
No one raised their hand. I would have been staying on the street.
Yeah, and Austin texted me, "Hey, my name's Austin Parker." And I sent a very detailed text. And I just sent back like, "Hey, I have 3 dogs. I hope you're okay with that." That's pretty much all. He's like, "Oh, that's fine. It's okay." So Austin stayed at my house, and like I said, and I'm not, this isn't me, hyping up Austin, but it was good for me to realize what detail-oriented football and detail-oriented coaching looked like, because I had never seen that. And it took me a year, and Austin can tell you this. Like, it took me a year of being stubborn, tired of holding a clipboard and charting plays on Friday night because I thought I was above that. I mean, I just did. And it took us an off season. It took me a year. Me and my other very good friend who coached offensive line. I learned in a summer more football than I had ever learned. And again, not hyping you up, Austin, because
Austin's worth hyping up.
well, I can't.
Well, you're looking at the guy who taught me the majority of what I know, so it's really, obviously.
More so.
Yeah.
Well, we spend a lot of time talking about the gospel, but because that's our heart, and using football as a tool to make Him known.
Yeah.
But sometimes that can be misconstrued. That we want to be good coaches too. We want to be prepared. We want to be detailed. We want to do a good job and give ourselves the best chance to win.
Yeah.
And me being a son of my dad and seeing his career and the ups and downs of it, sometimes there's the perception that and I'm speaking from a son to a dad, so obviously I'm biased, but I know who my dad is as a coach, and I've seen him behind behind the scenes and what he knows and what he's poured into people. And for me, I would put him up against any coach out there. And for me, it was just because my dad poured into me, it wasn't just teaching me a play so that I could go, run a play. He taught me the whys and the how to think for myself.
Yeah.
And so having the opportunity to spend time with you and other coaches throughout my career, it's really a tribute to my dad and just him pouring in to me and so many other players. And, so I appreciate the kind words, but I mean, you've meant so much to me, and at the end, I'm going to get to the point of that as well. So,
Yeah.
But
I learned a lot of football from Austin Karcher, and I give him a lot of credit for it. And he learned a lot of football from you.
But Brianna, you are very active in promoting the growth and encouragement of coaches' wives. I know that's something that you've been a big part of growing here in Mobile. Where did that passion come from? And are there any upcoming events you would like to promote for our listeners?
Oh, yes. So, well, I know that this profession is not like any other. I would liken it to maybe being in ministry for sure. But other than that, our husbands don't have just a normal 9 to 5, come home, leave work at work, be able to disconnect. It's just not like that. I feel like they're always thinking about it. And I just thought that there was a need for community among coaches' wives because it can feel lonely. I think about Lauren and Austin and how they are transplants here to Mobile from Texas, but I know y'all were at other places too before you got here, and just what Lauren has meant to me and how she, not knowing anyone, went out on a limb and became friends with me, and we started to get to know each other, and it just got me thinking about how, and like I got to babysit the kids and all of those things, and how coaches' wives are really a tight-knit group because you might be a transplant to a new city or a new state, and it's that coach's wife that helps to, keep your kids or brings dinner over or says, hey, let me fold your clothes, or hey, we're doing a Bible study, or whatever it may be, because there will be nights where coaches washing laundry at 1 a.m. after an away game, and and you're like, what other husband is doing this?
No overtime pay.
No overtime. And there are moments where it can feel like, dang, it feels like he's spending more time there than he is here. And, to have that community of wives has been really special in my life. So in February of last year, the Lord laid it on my heart to do this in a more formal way. And to have coaches get to have their conferences. So I said, well, what if there was a coaches' wives conference? And I partnered with our local Fellowship of Christian Athletes to start what we call Behind the Lines, because we wives really are behind the lines. And we're keeping the house running. We don't even have kids yet, but like when your husband is away, you are the manager of the household. You're keeping things running, and the world's still spinning at home, even if things are going great or not so great on the field. And so I just felt a desire to have a more formal, like, okay, let's really all get together and get to know each other, and not just get to know each other, but deepen our understanding of the word and of our calling in this, because you have a calling too. It's not just your husband that has a calling.
Yeah.
And that calling might be to cook dinner for the team. That calling might be to mentor a brand new coach's wife, whatever it looks like.
Yeah.
And so FCA was receptive to the idea, not just receptive, they were excited. And lo and behold, they had people praying about the same thing when I brought it to them. And it just was such a God thing, because I had no idea that people were praying about it before the Lord put it on my heart, or while he put it on my heart. And so we started planning, and then we had our first Behind the Lines in July of last year. And it was great. And it was about 25 wives that came together, and some from the area, some not from the area. You know, we had some that came from 2 and 3 hours away, and we started to form friendships. And so we've got the next one coming up. The date is going to be solidified soon. It'll either be July 20th or July 26th. So one of those two, but around the same time frame. And we had great speakers, Mrs. Pauline being one of them. And the Lord just blessed it more than I ever could have imagined. And I think it was just the first one of many to come. So, and the hope is that out of that, you'll have small groups and Bible studies and things like that form, and that life gets busy. And so it can be hard to maintain those things. But if women know that there's somebody in their corner that knows this lifestyle and knows what they're going through, that can make all the difference.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brianna.
How does music, you talked a lot about music, how does music play a role in your life today?
It's still a big part of it.
Yeah. I'm in the top, what is it? I'm in the top 1%. I listen to more music than 99% of the world. Spotify told me that.
There we go.
We use our gifts at church once a month. We lead worship at Day Spring Baptist in Mobile. And as Austin knows,
Yep.
time we have our Christmas production, we're always a big part of that. It's good to still be able to do it, because I've worked twice as a music minister at a small church, and there's a difference between leading music and then it being your job. And I've learned throughout the last couple of years that I enjoy doing it to where it's not a job more than I do. I enjoy it more now that we're just using our gifts.
Yep.
As church members, no money, no requests, no song requests. We're able to, just contribute and give back to the church. So that's the biggest thing.
It's awesome.
Gifts.
Now, is there within your guys' story together, is there a song that, that you guys, Dalton, you were talking about how it brings you back to a certain spot. Is there one Christian song that does that for y'all?
Yeah. A big one that we really focused on that was good to us during everything we went through there's a song called song by Sovereign Grace Music called "Oh Lord, My Rock and My Redeemer."
Okay.
It's a good it's almost, you hear, especially Christian songs, there's a verse, each verse, like, "It is well with my soul," you're like, it's always good to be able to think about what you went through and go, all right, this is what I'm dealing with, and these lyrics are speaking to me. And especially when they're biblical lyrics and they're straight from the Bible.
Yeah.
And that was what was so good about that song.
Well, I'm going to put a little pressure on you. Would you guys be willing to sing the chorus of it together?
Yeah. We just sing the first verse.
Okay.
What are the words?
Oh Lord, my rock and my redeemer.
Well, I got to pull up the lyrics.
Yeah.
There we go.
This song is one while he's doing that on nights just following my parents' death, when I couldn't sleep, I would just put this song on, and I literally would click the repeat button, and it would repeat all night long, and I would wake up the next morning, and it would still be playing.
We'll sing
That's
that.
the
We can
piece.
sing the second verse. This is the one that speaks to me the most, and it's this one right here.
Okay.
Oh Lord, my rock and my redeemer, strong defender of my weary heart, my sword to fight the cruel deceiver, and my shield against his hateful darts, my song when enemies surround me, my hope when tides of sorrow rise, my joy when trials are abounding, your faithfulness, my refuge in the night.
Wow. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes, it was.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Oh, I recommend, it's like, if anybody's looking for a new song to listen to, that's my go-to.
Yeah.
Who sings that again?
Sovereign Grace.
Sovereign Grace.
Yeah.
Well, Austin, let's jump to legacy as we wrap our time up together. They've been so gracious to share so much. Wow.
So the first question I have for you, what does the kingdom of God mean to y'all? And how does it flesh itself out in coaching and teaching?
That's a loaded question. So we talked about this, not to plug my own podcast, but I do a podcast with my best friend Victoria, and we just talked about this last week. Our episode was Christ in the Workplace, and how to share your faith when you're in an environment that can often be hostile to it. And I think that a lot of the ways, especially right now, we don't have kids yet, so our kids are our students, and they know that there's something different about us.
Yeah.
And having that kingdom mindset of everything, like I might be the only Jesus that this student sees. And everything that I say and I do should hopefully point to Jesus. But now, of course, we're human. We're still not perfect. We're still going to make mistakes, but even better then, because we have opportunities to share the gospel and to say, hey, this is not about being perfect. This is about the one who was perfect on our behalf. And so I have seen time and again the Lord open doors for me to share in my own classroom in a public school, a place that I'm really supposed to do that. But if they ask me the question, you best believe I'm going to answer it. And how God just organically creates these opportunities for me to share my faith, and I didn't even have to force it. I didn't have to, and that's the way that he works. And I think that having that kingdom mindset of like, yes, my job is to teach English and to teach public speaking, but if I can influence one person for the kingdom, then I will have really done my job,
Amen. What about you, Dalton?
I think specifically, like, scripture that I always hold on to is Philippians 2, and and the pastor, he shared it this morning. You talk about the perfect example of humility is Christ, and how he did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but instead he poured himself out for us, and then ultimately through that, and it's a crazy thing to think about, because it ends with saying, although he was humbled himself to a cross, one day, every knee will bow, and every tongue will confess. I think when it comes to the kingdom, just being humble, and not just in a sense of like, it's cliche to say, I got to be humble here. No, not that, but like being a servant.
Mm.
And I think you can go along, things can work out for you if you recognize that what you're doing is in order to serve others, in order to be there for others, and ultimately show humility like Christ did. And I think, like we were talking about, those students and players are going to learn more from,
Your example.
how they see you act and how they see you serve,
Mm.
than they will just, with words that sometimes don't mean anything. And I think that's important when it comes to building the kingdom. Is using Christ as your ultimate example of humility and being able to serve, and ultimately, give up of yourself and count others more significant than yourself, like it says in Philippians 2. I think that's important.
What would you say is your most memorable moment as a couple looking back in this journey?
Oh my goodness, that's hard. Most memorable moment.
I would say our honeymoon in New York City.
It was great. We had a great honeymoon.
And she's from Miller, Alabama, which I haven't been. I've been places because of Voices of Mobile. I've been to Israel. I've been to a lot of different, big cities. She had not really been, So we step out of the subway in New York City, and we're looking around going, "What the
heck?" I was young. I mean, I was 20, and he had just turned 23.
So, coming off the subway, out of the subway station with 4 bags of luggage, not knowing where to go, I could have brought her anywhere, and she was going to follow me. She didn't, and I didn't know what I was doing. Turning me around, I didn't know what I was doing either. I think probably my most memorable thing is like having to guide her. All right, come on, we're in New York City.
Well, and then we spent
don't get too far behind me.
We spent Christmas Day in New York City in 2019, just the two of us, our first Christmas as a married couple, and just to walk the city streets. I mean, it was Christmas Day, so nobody was really out and about, and you felt like you kind of had a city to yourself, and it just felt like, dang, this is going to be good. I have never second guessed this marriage. I've never second guessed that we're supposed to be together. And I think New York City is probably what kicked that off.
Yeah, having to park in Atlanta and leave our car at some sketchy parking place. We don't know what we're doing.
But we thought we were grown. I mean, really,
Hey, and I'll look back 20 years from now and go, hey, when I was 28, I was...
Absolutely. Well, that's a good one. What are some of y'all's goals moving forward?
Goodness. I would say for me right now in the season I'm in, I'm teaching a class at Satsuma High School and coaching. I obviously want to keep growing as a coach, learn. I have a great head coach, by the way. I hadn't mentioned him. Coach Rodney Jordan. He coached me when I was at Bryant when I was a freshman. He didn't have kids of his own. He still doesn't. And I always knew there was something different about him. And I always knew that I wanted to work for him. So really, and I know us as coaches, we have off-season goals. My off-season goals is to pick his brain as much as I can and be more humble and realize that I don't have things figured out. And then again, when it comes to my team, we're building an airplane. I'm building an airplane. And they have me building an airplane. So my goal is to get it done and do a good job with it. And for us, I mean, I guess you can say for us, I kind of talked about me, but you can say kind of
Oh, it's okay.
Be better with money, because I'm terrible with it.
Yeah, I think there are always, financial goals to be more stable. But, I mean, definitely goals to start a family soon. And I feel like other than that, I don't necessarily have any desire to move I think his desire, he wants to be a head coach one day. He definitely does want that, but we're content and we're just enjoying the ride and knowing that the Lord will bring the right opportunities our way because he's always done that. And I'm in a place where I don't know if I'll teach forever. I don't know if, there have been a couple of opportunities that I've considered, but I just want it to be very clear. I never want to try to make something happen that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And I have found that the best plan is God's plan, and God's plan is going to work itself out, even amidst our stupidity,
So, yeah.
How do you guys want to be remembered?
Wow. I think the only thing that really matters is that you're remembered for your love for Jesus and your love for other people.
I think I want to be remembered, especially in the profession, is something's different about that guy. And I hope that it's because they can say that there's something else guiding me with a Christian worldview, with the Holy Spirit, that's caused me to be selfless. And sometimes, and I think this is, not a lot of people say this, but I wouldn't mind if people would say, that guy's a little crazy. He does things a little different. But that's kind of what I want to be remembered by as a coach is, hey, he found a way to get things done that may not have been orthodox, but there was something different that was causing him to be that way. I think that's kind of what I would say about myself.
Well, we always end our podcast with this question. It's one of my favorites, and that is we call final words, guys. We'd like to give you the opportunity to share final words with each other, or if there's something else you want to say to our listeners, but specifically, Brianna, you to Dalton and Dalton to Brianna, final words of what's on your heart. And then Austin will follow up, and then I'll close us.
I don't know. I mean, that's final words.
As a 28-year-old and a 25-year-old.
Right.
Yes.
We usually do a little, or older people who so.
Yeah. I feel like our faith is central and it's non-negotiable, in our home and in our marriage. And I guess if I had a word of advice to young couples, that would be it, for your faith to be a non-negotiable in your home, and for Christ to be central in everything and in your decision making and in your endeavors and whatever it looks like, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So I think those are my final words.
I would say for you, I would like to focus on being more positive with things, no matter what it is, find the positive, and then appreciate small things. And I think I would say that to anybody, whether they're going into coaching, whether they're getting married, always appreciate the small things. The other day, I had a practice. We didn't go to work, but I had practice at Satsuma. I coached softball as well, and her being there, just watching practice, and the girls being there, and seeing her, the softball players, those small things like that. That's a big deal to me, and I think she recognizes that as well. There are days where, hey, I got to go do this laundry at the field house, or I want to go do my film study, but I want to do it at the school. Do you want to go with me? And I think I'm thankful for that she does things like that. She goes with me wherever I go, and that's something that I'm appreciative of.
Well, for everyone listening, God put on my heart to, in December, over Christmas, I'm at Dad's house, and God put on my heart to have Dalton and Brianna on this podcast, and God's just done so much in their lives, obviously, as you've sat here and listened. But to me, I just wanted to highlight a few critical moments where y'all have been there in my journey and my story, that I just want to make sure that that I appreciate all that you've done for me. first off, I'm moving from Texas to Mobile, and Dalton holds his hand up, and he's the only one that raises his hand, taking the new offensive coordinator to stay at his house.
Yeah.
And, just their hospitality, both Brianna and Dalton, and that selflessness that you talked about as a kid, and that was modeled for you through Jeff and your sister. And, you did that for me. So I'm thankful for that. When we moved in, the day that we moved in, we had a 7-on-7 that night. So I have a wife and 4 kids who don't know anything about Mobile. And I got to go to a 7-on-7 tournament over at UMS. And we called Brianna up, and she doesn't know Lauren at all, but she comes and she helps with the kids. And I think you brought Chick-fil-A, and you just, you love my family in a time that can be very vulnerable, and, you feel a little bit out of control, for them, their first time here. There was one time, I think it was Ella had a ER visit.
Yeah.
And something was wrong with my car. I don't remember what it was, but I needed to get over there, or I needed to be picked up from the ER. I don't even remember the whole details, but I called you, Dalton, and without blinking, you came and you picked me up, and we had one of the deepest conversations that, I've had. And it was just, and once again, I don't remember everything that was said, but I remember what I felt.
Yeah.
And I just appreciate your heart and willing to take care of me in that moment when my wife had to stay with my daughter at the hospital. And then timely texts. Dalton, obviously you left one year before I ended up leaving Bryant. But it's been about 2 years now. And just every once in a while you send just a text that it always just seems very timely and well needed. And I can just tell that you hear the Spirit and when to communicate and encourage. I'm thankful for your all's transparency and your vulnerability, and y'all's maturity. And I'm excited to see what God's going to continue to do in y'all's life. And I appreciate y'all for all that you mean to me and my family.
Yeah.
Thank you, Austin.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, we're thankful for y'all. Lauren's been a mentor for me in a lot of moments.
Yeah.
She's a very special person. I'm so thankful for her.
When I sit and listen, I've got to say thank you as well, because anybody that builds into my son, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
And we'll never, forget that either. And I know he talks very highly of both of you in various ways. But as I sat here today and just listened to your story and your desire and ability to communicate it, I thought of my one good friend wrote a book called Quiet Strength. And that's what I thought about when I looked at the two of you. I thought, here's a couple young in their marriage that has been through probably more than most people will in a lifetime already. And just to see your ability to communicate in such a position of strength, which was his strength, because, weakness is where we're strong.
Yeah.
And to be able to have you communicate that, and then to watch you, another word that jumped out at me is contentment. To be able to be content in the midst of all that's going on. And the other one was the beauty of relationship. And it made me see the picture of Papa once again, because that's why, we're here. That's our purpose, is he wanted a relationship with us before time ever began. And so I see the beauty of your two relationship as you walk through many tough moments already in your life. And so it's just a beautiful picture of, another word I thought was gentleness. I sense a real gentle spirit in both of you, and encourage you as you continue to walk in your marriage to continue to just talk to Papa about, how both of you can encourage each other and walk out this beautiful picture of your story. And so Austin and I would like to thank you from the bottom of our heart for sharing your story with us today on Awaken Kingdom Culture. where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time.